this year. Um, Today's topic tackles on an issue that has been circulating around the Department of Geography since digital mapping became prevalent. And my name is Joseph Palis, one of the board members of the Philippine Geographical Society, and I will be the moderator for this afternoon session. Before we officially begin our program, let me go over some house rules governing this online session. Please be reminded to keep your microphones on mute during the discussion to avoid unnecessary background noise. Also, please note that this lecture is being recorded for documentation purposes. We would like to encourage our virtual audience to actively participate in our discussion by typing in your questions, comments, or reactions in the Zoom chat boxes. This will be addressed during our open forum later. We're also streaming live on YouTube under the UP Department of Geography. Uh, and before we start this meeting, and before we end our meeting, we will be taking a group photos. So please be ready to turn on your respective cameras for this activity. So thank you very much. Now for opening remarks, please welcome one of the board members of the Philippine Geographical Society, the president of the Philippine Geographical Society, Professor Eman Garcia.
Thank you, Sir Joe. Isang magandang hapon sa ating lahat. Welcome to the 8th Philippine Geographical Society Lecture Series for the year. As we all know, the PGS Lecture Series is a monthly gathering where we feature a specific geographical undertaking in the Philippines. The PGSLS is co-sponsored by the UP Department of Geography. This session of the PGSLS will focus on GIS and spatial data, and I'm particularly excited for this afternoon's lecture because I have used the works of our speaker as a reference to our conduct of the participatory three-dimensional mapping activities. I'm also happy to share the word cloud that we have generated from the participants' registration. Keywords include location, space, GIS, maps, fast, geographic, and informative. Other words are attribute, representations, place, decision-making, and my personal favorite, power. I am intrigued as to how these words can tie up to this afternoon's lecture. Muli, maraming salamat for joining us on behalf of the Philippine Geographical Society and the UP Department of Geography. Welcome to our 8th PGS Lecture Series for 2022.
Thank you very much, Eman. And indeed, the word cloud will be very interesting to look at later on, as those were your reactions when we asked you a question about what you think of this, the lectures that's about to be presented. I would like to introduce our speaker, and may just start by saying that she's been a very good friend. We're college classmates and a very dear friend through the years, and we have communicated through the years in various capacities. But to introduce her, Jasmin Callosa-Tarr is the Asia Pacific technical leader for GIS delivery and the spatial lead for Jacobs for New Zealand. She completed her geography undergraduate course at the University of the Philippines, same year as I did, and she subsequently taught digital mapping and GIS in the same institution from the years 2000 to 2002. She is the current spatial stream chair for Survey and Spatial New Zealand, deputy chair for the New Zealand ESRI Users Group, and the secretary for the New Zealand GIS for Conservation. For 16 years, Jasmin has been a New Zealand-based GIS professional. In recent years, she completed her studies in emergency management at Massey University, that's in New Zealand. Her personal and professional brand is, and I like this very much, curiosity, strategic, analytic, contributive, and creative. As a leader, she believes in inspiring and mentoring innovative and curious people who can freely and effectively use their knowledge and talent to create better communities that we live in. To present her lecture entitled GIS to Leverage on Spatial Data, is an honor and privilege to welcome my good friend, Jasmin Callosa-Tarr.
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here and sharing my experience and my knowledge over the last. It's not only 16 years, it's only 16 years in New Zealand. So good thing Joseph didn't mention which year we graduated. It's a secret. I'll just share my screen to start with the my presentation. So who has seen this map? Can you raise your hands and react on your on the screen? Yeah. I think at the beginning of the pandemic in 2020, everybody has been looking at this dashboard, looking at what's happening all over the world. And, I used to wake up like 3 a.m., at different times of the day to just watch and see what's happening around the world and how everybody's progressing, how everybody's reacting to the pandemic. It's such a powerful dashboard, and it tells a lot about the story of the different countries on how what's happening and how we are actually faring in the pandemic. So with all this, the stories that's this dashboard is telling, it's actually behind this is data. It's about spatial data. So tonight or this afternoon, I'm going to be talking about spatial data. I will be talking about GIS. And so I'll start off, what is GIS? What is spatial data? And how do we integrate it with other technologies? I'm also going to be sharing about 3 case studies. I'm not sure if I can share case study 2, but if we have time, but I might go from case study 1 to case study 3, and then let's have a discussion. So what is GIS? GIS is a spatial system that creates, manages, analyzes, and maps all types of data. Before, it's just so limiting to whatever we can actually map. But now, because of the technology, it's the boundaries for creating maps is so minimal. Everything has a spatial location, isn't it? And it's so amazing that technology is going as fast as our what's happening in the world, and everything gets connected with each other. So a GIS connects data to a map, to the attributes, to the tables, to whatever an idea that we have in the world. So this provides mapping and analysis that is used in our industry, in science, and in almost every industry in the world. So GIS helps users understand patterns, gives us insights, gives us understanding of relationships and geographic context. The benefits include improved communication and efficiency, as well as better management. It also gives us engagement with our stakeholders. This part, actually, this is where I started my GIS journey, because working with a conservation organization in the Philippines in the early 90s, it's we needed to enable remote communities to be able to understand what they have, that they actually are more knowledgeable than people who are carrying books, or has people who are outsiders who might be like experts in their own way. But however, people in the remote areas are more are experts in their own environment, in their own locale. So another thing I'd like to talk about is, what is spatial data? And I saw that you have a lot of words that keywords that you have used in the in that slide that Eman shared. And for me, spatial data occupies space. it has a location. It can have a coordinate system. It can have a coordinates, which is, the X and Y. It can have, it can be an address. It can be a reference. A reference can be something like near the lake or at the intersection of such and such. It might not have the address, but it can be a relative location, and you can identify that on a map. And it can also be a quantitative and qualitative data. The next one is that it can also be a perception. And how can you say that a perception can actually be a spatial data? Well, a perception of a person, and that person lies or is in a specific area, and that means that that person has a location. So any perception or any idea or any knowledge can also be mapped. And the next one is, that I think is that it can also be represented, as long as it can be represented by a point, by a line or an area, it's already a spatial data. And as we know, with the, maybe most of us are so familiar with Google, everything, even like the, what do you call, the times of a restaurant is open during the day can also be located on the map. So anything that we can think of actually has a space, and it can be located, and it can become a spatial data. And what are the types of spatial data that we have? It can be statistics, it can be a survey, it can be an interview, it can be a satellite imagery or a GPS data. Aerial photographs is also one, paper maps is also one, or community maps, tabular data, reports and documents, and also people's knowledge. These are all can be used as a spatial data. So in terms of what are the different aspects of spatial data or geographic data, these are all linked to machine learning. Machine learning has been coined to a different, before it was named as a modeling. The modeling word is now changed to machine learning. It can be data engineering, it can be big data, it can be data visualization, scripting, and automation. These are all integrated aspects of a spatial data. And then we talk about integration with other technologies, because GIS doesn't exist on its own at the moment. It becomes more powerful if we can use it with other technologies. So like GPS, GNSS positioning, scanning, all this information that we can use. And what excites me actually, the different uses of social media, so that we can actually locate even blogs, even like if you said something in Twitter, that can actually be located, it can be harvested and put in a map. And these are, the power of internet and how we can actually enable all this information that's floating around us and put it in a very systematic and in a very spatial way and special way, so that we can make sense of the information that we have, and also be able to model and be able to analyze and be able to make decisions based on the systematic way of doing things in with our spatial data. The last thing, before digital engineering is quite so separate from GIS, but now actually we can enable even engineering information to be able to be part of GIS. And these are, for example, asset data, maintenance data, the cost of actually maintaining all those information. And we can enable this and see that by enabling digital engineering and GIS together, that's actually more beneficial to the communities that we are living in. So I'd like to share with you, before I left for New Zealand, I've been involved in documenting, and I actually co-authored a book on participatory 3D dimensional modeling, and with the GIS, which is actually called participatory GIS. And I just would like to share a few slides on that. And this is actually enabling people's knowledge to be part of the GIS into participatory 3D modeling. And what that means is that you are actually enabling that the people's knowledge or the community knowledge to be authoritative data that the GIS use. So what is the rationale of the P3DM? Because we in the Philippines, we have alone, 220 dialects, and communication is sometimes, very difficult, a barrier for us to understand each other. So spatial participatory tools can be strategically brought in to reinforce bottom-up development and collective decision-making. We often see in our governments that it's always top-down, but in the Philippines, what's important is how we can enable bottom-up development and participation from our communities. So, like a universal language based on colors, shapes, and dimensions, P3DM is a powerful communication, which means it helps bridge the language, education, and whatever cultural barriers we might have. So, participatory 3D modeling is a process wherein traditional information is combined with people's knowledge. So people are the ones who are putting in information, and what they think is the spatial data that they have, and putting that on a 3D model. So here, what we see sometimes on topographic maps, it's quite hard because you just see it on the map. But here, people could actually feel it and be able to visualize their information, and becomes a powerful tool for our communities. Because sometimes in our communities, when people are not so educated, they feel that whatever they know about their locale becomes inferior to whatever people are telling them. So it gives them confidence that they actually know something about their environment. So participatory 3D modeling captures people's knowledge and combines with traditional spatial information, which are contour data. And it facilitates locating particular resources. You could see how much excitement these fishermen were able to locate. Actually, this is where we can find dugong, or, for example, where the nesting sites of the different species. And it's so amazing to be able to unite and engage with the different people in the communities by seeing them really contributing to their knowledge. And it offers equal opportunities for participation. And this is so important because usually women are marginalized in terms of the thinking, whether they would be able to contribute information or be able to share whatever they know about their environment, because of the different roles that people are having in their communities or in the household. They have different knowledge that they could share in the process. And even elders play a prominent role, because this is so important. When our environment change, of course, the knowledge as well changes. And the elders also play a prominent role because they can tell us the story of our environment, where the trees used to be and where the boundaries of that information used to be. And yeah, it's really amazing to see our elders being part of this communication. And this is also easily understood regardless of differences in language, education, or culture. I'd been to one exercise in Vietnam where it has to be translated in 3 different languages. So from English to the national language in Vietnam and to the local language. But actually, it doesn't really matter at all, because people were able to understand once the symbologies of the different information was laid out to everybody. So it becomes meaningful for everybody. There's no barriers in terms of language or culture. And then it also provides an easy reference, and being able to provide, because my idea of a hectare can be different to your idea of the hectare. But with this one, because we give them an easy reference to what a hectare or an area looks like, it becomes an easy reference for everybody to follow. And then the next one is it offers a bird's eye view. And it's just so amazing to see that sometimes people in their own environment cannot see what's actually behind the mountain range. And then when they see, oh, actually, they're also planting, for example, kasoy on this side. And they thought that they're the only ones planting kasoy on this side of the mountain. And for them, it enables them to share whatever issues they might have or whatever opportunities that they may have for the community. And it also establishes visual and tangible relations between resources and issues. Because, like, for example, there was this exercise that we did in somewhere north of Metro Manila. I can't remember I think next to Montalban. I can't remember the town. And actually the part of the mountain has already been cut off, but the contour data is still there. And then the people told us that actually it doesn't exist anymore. But the contour data is still there. So they know what's happening with their environment, and they tell us what are actually the issues that they're having because of that. And it provides insiders a medium for dialoguing with outsiders. So even if one cannot speak English, for example, fully, they can tell the story by showing what it looks like on the map and what they're doing. And also helps stakeholders in dealing with conflicts. And as you know, because of so many different interests in our resources, so many different stakeholders. And this 3D model enables stakeholders to be able to understand each other from whatever point of view it is. And it also contains georeference information, which can be easily linked to a GIS. Data can be extracted by simple means, and we can actually georeference and put it in the GIS map. So the next one I'll show you, which one do you think is from remote sensing and one from the community map that we just did? So the first one on your left, is it your left? The colorful ones, that came from remote sensing information. And so on this one, it tells you the different activities that's happening in El Nido. And it shows you what's actually happening and how people are living in the community. And there's a lot of detail and information that you could actually extract by just looking at it. So participatory 3D modeling integrates local and external knowledge of those who best know the territory, the resources, and the issues and concerns. Men and women of all age sets are, part of it, the elders, indigenous people, local government officials, NGOs, and government officials, and students, and researchers, and facilitators, everybody. So the specific applications of P3DM is supporting traditional knowledge and intellectual property rights. It enhances collaborative planning and collaborative research. And it also can be applied to participatory monitoring and evaluation, and also manages conflicts. So whose knowledge counts? Actually, everybody in the local area, everybody, they all count in sharing their knowledge. And the local people were able to identify different types of vegetation in the study area. So, all the different people were able to share information that has never been really shared in a very tangible way, where people can actually see where they are. So there's a lot of lessons learned. And so one of this is like knowledge can be quantified by converting the information from the model through the GIS, thus enabling statistical analysis. There's also a lot of outcomes that can be learned from 3D modeling, because sometimes once you see it, you can realize that there's actually an opportunity to reform the policy framework so that we could meet the needs of the community and the national priorities, if we listen. So there's just one of this, because I felt this is so important. If you tell me, I forget. Show me, I remember. Involve me, I understand. That's one of the pillars of actually participatory GIS. How am I with time? I have 2 more slides. Maybe I'll share this one first, which is the digital engineering. Because I just would like to show you where actually GIS is going, in the whole wild world. So in 2017, there was a big earthquake that happened in New Zealand. And the North Canterbury, which is in the South Island, most of the roads has been destroyed, including the railway line and the road that next to it. So actually for 4 years, everything stopped in that part of the South Island, which is the upper South Island. I'll just show you like a story map. Can you see this? Can you see the link?
It's still loading.
Okay, good. So I've been part of this project, looking after the technologies and resources that we have for this project. Such a big project for New Zealand. So this is a story map. It's so cool, isn't it? It's a story map where it talks about the different work that they have to do from north of South Island up to just north of Christchurch. I'm sure everybody knows about Christchurch, because before this earthquake, they were just finishing the Canterbury earthquake project, the recovery. So that was another 5 years. So everybody just went from from one earthquake recovery project to another. So there were 3,300 things to fix to get the State Highway 1 and the main North Line rail reopened, and then more resilient network is needed for this project. So this is an example of a story map, and this was done in the Experience Builder to provide information for external people and understanding what's happening with the project. So maybe I'll take a look at the railing against time. Everybody likes stories, isn't it? And because stories, we remember better when stories are being shared. So this is a type of story that you can tell about the project. So, like for example, this one, Old Claverley Creek. So this is what happened to that creek, and it gives you the information of what's happening in that project. So Blue Duck Tunnel, for example, gives you some information of what has been done. And then I'll show you the design and innovation. Am I going fast? So it's looking at the different sites, because it's I'm maybe some of you knows about geology and geomorphology. So this mountain, because the kind of soil that we have in New Zealand is so crumbly, it's quite strong, but actually once it rains, it crumbles. So what happened was, after the earthquake, the seabed rose, and then the railway went sideways several times, and then it blocked the road. And then most of the mountain had actually fallen down, and created, a block to the road, so nobody could actually pass it. So they created meshes to the mountain, and there's a lot of helicopters going in and out every day for 3 years just to be able to build that mesh and the wall. So many people, I don't know, there were like for 4 years it must be like 2,000 people, the geologists, GIS people, all working together to work on this project. So anyway, I just would like to say that the future of GIS is so exciting and so boundless. I feel that it can enrich so many lives because of how powerful it can be. So in the future, we're at the moment, my interest lies on digital twins and smart cities, and how we are able to build smart communities that are connected, that are reliable and resilient, and be able to connect with each other. So that's it's for another topic, but GIS and spatial professionals like us plays a very big role in this innovation, and where our technology is going in a few, maybe in a blink of an eye. It's very, very fast. It's happening, very quickly. And I guess we'll just open the floor for discussion.
Thank you very much, Jasmin. Your talk really brought a lot of insights and a range of topics, from the one you showed us on engineering and also in the realm of the social sciences. While some of the things that you also mentioned we're also doing, it's nice to see how it complements research from your own research in New Zealand, as well as in Southeast Asia with our own research. At this point, we are going to open the floor for questions or comments. You can just type it on the Zoom box or Zoom chat, or we could also get some of the questions from the YouTube channel that we have. Oh, no, I'm sorry, I didn't see it. I'll start with Oni Martinez and then Jan.
Yes, hello. Good afternoon to everyone.
Hi,
Good
Oni.
afternoon. Hi, ma'am. I'm so excited.
Hi!
I'm sorry, hindi po ako makapag-camera because of the internet, but I would like to
Alam.
take this opportunity
Imaginein na
to...
lang kita.
Yes, yes, ma'am. I would like to take this opportunity to also commend Ma'am Callosa-Tarr, being a young faculty at the time when we were colleagues at the department. But more so kasi, ma'am, I sort of kind of started in the NGO related work and used your book as a
Very
guide.
good.
Yes, and I think my first experience working with AnthroWatch and other partner organizations in IP communities would be getting some of the visuals from, I mean, the steps, and then creating some visuals for the community to be able to follow the steps in doing participatory 3D modeling. And that was really like the first book, and I still have it now.
Ah, good.
Yes, ma'am. And we're like Bunny and Di and Trina, we're sharing these copies amongst ourselves and also showing our friends when we got the opportunity to join other organizations internationally. So malaki yung influence niya sa aking career, ma'am. So
I'm
I'm
so
very
proud of you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. And so parang I also want to mention the emphasis on both local knowledge, indigenous knowledge, and then the use of geospatial technologies, especially in the last, well, I started parang mga early 2000s, and we've come a long way in terms of also teaching and providing several platforms for the involvement of local communities in the mapping process. And I was very fortunate na I started my career following yung mga lessons on yun nga being promoting participatory and inclusive processes, also at the same time being part of a group with anthropologists na they're always of course concerned with ethical practice. They're very knowledgeable on yung parang how to really make the process, yung walk the talk, sabi nga sa akin ng boss ko dati. Isa puso mo talaga yung yung pakikitungo at yung pag-promote ng concerns ng community above anything. Ayun po.
Tama.
So now my students are also parang they're kind of more interested now in web-based GIS and story maps, ganyan. So most of the projects of the students now, parang when they saw the potential of story maps and how it integrates different media like photos, videos, ano yan, mga iba-iba pang klase ng spatial and mga creative ways of showing spatial information as well. Parang ang ganda din po ng potentials po nga ng ng technology and combining it with digital media. So I think towards that direction siguro the challenge remains then how to share this kinds of technologies with local communities kasi because of the limitation of siguro internet and in some areas of course na remote pa rin. But what's good is we always emphasize na it's not really a limitation because there's always a way of integrating, what's available from the community, part of their resources. Like for example, the use of mental maps and having mental maps as part of the media that you can show in story maps. So these are the things that we also do. We also do counter mapping and the use of geospatial technologies. So may mga projects din po kami with local communities experiencing development aggression. And maganda din po na yung forma at iba-ibang paraan ng aktivismo at um, um, pag-engage po sa diskurso ng mapa at paano din siya pwedeng gamitin to promote marginalized communities or parang promote the rights of marginalized communities. So ang ganda lang po din siguro ng prospects natin for that kind of work. So that's just all I want to say, and thank you so much, ma'am, na masaya kami na po kayo. Thank you po.
Salamat.
Thank you, Oni, for sharing that with us in your formative years in learning GIS. And now that you're teaching this yourself, there's a lot of, well, not really a lot, but there's a few people here who actually taught the same classes that you all did, GIS, Geography 197. It's interesting to see how far it has gone. And I'm, of course, also counting Dr. Gutierrez, who started teaching that class as well. Anyway, I'd like to call on Jan Nudat if you have a question or comment.
Yes po, sir. Audible po. Hello po. Rinig po ba ako?
Oo.
Ayun. Hello po, Ma'am Jasmin, and good day po sa lahat. And thank you po sa faculty for having this discussion. Actually, this is my first webinar after graduating po. I'm a fresh grad po pala ng Geography Department. And yes po, isa po ako sa mga produkto ng ni Ma'am Oni, specifically when it comes to GIS po. And I guess po ang ko-comment ko lang din po and tanong po. First, yung comment po ay thank you nga po. I actually I am also a GIS user din po, QGIS po. And I truly appreciate po yung power and yung utility po ng GIS as a tool in visualizing and giving yun nga po, meaningful patterns not just to geographers but to everyone else, yung mga specifically yung mga hindi in-depth sa academe. Kumbaga mas madali nga po nilang maiintindihan yung GIS, yung output ng GIS. Last year po kasi we also had a project po, yung JOG 192 po. We found way po how to interpret data po na kinuha ng prof namin sa Bicol, and it's about and na-appreciate ko kung paano siya na-present through a web-based map po, which is still available pa rin po up until now. And yun po. I guess I'll go to my question na lang din po. I'm particularly curious po of how GIS is being used, or how do you think GIS is being used when it comes I'm curious of how GIS is being used in the Philippines as compared to other countries po. I'm particularly interested of how advanced maybe yung meron po sa ibang bansa, like for example po sa New Zealand as compared to the Philippines. Kasi I'm rooting this question po kasi because I also had challenges din po when it comes to GIS. As a student of pandemic, one of the challenges I had po is yung lack of data po and lack of open data, na parang ang hirap pong kumuha ng informasyon lalo na kung hindi ikaw yung nasa field mismo. So ang tatanong ko lang po is, meron po bang ganong high availability of data ng GIS sa ibang bansa as compared to the Philippines? Ayun lang po. Salamat.
Okay. Siguro dalawang aspeto. I feel siguro, Joe, nauna akong naging GIS person sa Pilipinas sa department natin, di ba?
Yes,
So,
true.
Oo. Nung time na yon, mahirap talaga yung data talaga. Ikaw yung gagawa ng data. Pag ikaw yung una, so lahat you started to create data and capture data during that time. Pero ang advantage kasi ng Pilipinas is that we have lots of information and people are happy to share information if they are fully engaged and if they feel that their data could actually be put into use na magbe-benefit yung communities. Ayoko i-compare sa New Zealand, but in New Zealand, because ang New Zealand medyo, the government pays for data. So, lahat ng councils or compared sa municipalities natin ay merong silang data. Pero meron ring ibang marginalized na councils na they don't have data. So, ang masasabi ko, New Zealand has a lot of data and, medyo progreso doon. But then, I think in terms of community knowledge and how it's mapped, wala masyado. Kasi sa kanila, ang tingin nila for engagement, it doesn't need to be, put into a map, or doesn't need to be, the stakeholders doesn't need to be engaged as much as, compared sa Pilipinas. Sa atin, kailangan may fully, kailangan nakabuy-in talaga lahat ng tao sa community. Sa New Zealand, they have to, submit if they disagree or agree, pero ang kanilang participation is only about information. Sa atin, ang participation is about mobilization, involvement, and they're the ones who's driving the projects. Yun. So, pero in terms of technology and skills ng mga tao, I think Philippines talaga maraming magagaling resources talaga na mas pwede pa nating sabihin na mas magaling or comparable sa mga tao dito sa New Zealand. I can see actually dalawang office mate ko na nasa call na products yata ng geography din.
Thank you, Min. There's another question here. We have two more questions, actually. This one was sent anonymously, so I'm just going to read it. It's in Filipino. So, nabanggit po sa lecture kanina ang intellectual property rights. Given po na participatory yung model na tinalakay, ano-ano ang usual processes, protocols, or formats of intellectual property rights ang applicable sa products ng P3DM or participatory 3D mapping? Example, sino po ang owners or may hawak sa rights?
Yes. Sino may hawak ng intellectual property? Ay ang mga tao na nagbigay ng information. So like for example, there are so many critical sites sa Pilipinas na dapat pinoprotektahan ang mga species na endangered na hindi dapat malaman ng ibang mga tao that might abuse that knowledge. So there are times na when we were doing it, we have to remove the pins that actually pinpoints where, for example, the endangered species are. This is because we wanted to protect the resources, the conservation sites of that area. So it's not people who are doing the research who owns the data. It's actually the community, because their environment relies on that knowledge. They need to keep it to themselves. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you, Min. Actually, I may have to also call Eman Garcia, who has done participatory 3D mapping and who has used extensively some of the earlier guides that you did just before in the book and in other manuals that you may have co-authored. So, Eman, do you want to chime in a little bit and weigh in to that
Yes
question?
Po. Thank you po. Nanliit naman ako bigla pa. pero yeah, we've been doing P3DM po, kagaya po nung nabanggit sa inyo, Ma'am Karina, Ma'am Jasmin. No? We've been doing P3DM. Yung most extensive po na nagawa namin is with UNICEF, wherein we partner sa kanila po para sa child-centered approach on disaster risk reduction. And yung usual po nitong questions ng intellectual property rights, no. Kagaya po ng sagot nyo, yes, sa community po, no. What's good about this is the community has control on what to show doon sa map and what to omit from the map. Kagaya nga kung halimbawa may mga conflict or may mga unsafe na areas, no, of course we would want it to be as comprehensive as we can because we want it to be a sort of repository of database na pwede nilang magamit for their planning. But yung issue po natin ng intellectual property rights at saka ng mga data privacy and all. So what we do is we let the community decide, sila yung nag-uusap, ano ba yung dapat ipakita, what information can be included in the map, or ano ba yung pwedeng nasa sa database lang ng may-ari, and then kahit hindi siya nakikita sa map, at least meron pa rin control yung may ano. So yes, yung mga tao po, it's always with the people, kasi after ma-facilitate yung P3DM, it's always with them na sila po yung may iwanan at gagamit ng mapa. Yun lang po. Thank you po.
Thank you, Eman, for weighing in. We have two more questions actually, and I'm just gonna read one of them. This might be related. So aside from Jasmin, there might be some of you who may chime in and also contribute some of your insights based on the questions that are being asked. But here's one more question. Thank you for the P3DM guidebook. I have been doing community-based participatory 3D mapping for almost 14 years. Usually, involved naman mga tao at very participatory ang process during the 3 to 5 day activity. But after that, there's not much effort or initiative from the community to update the map. Very few are really taking care of the map. I would say 1 out of 4. So the P3DM process appears very much driven from the outside. Is that a problem? Or should we expect communities to really take care of the map? How about your experience? Min, do you want to respond to it?
Yeah. So there are other projects that we had created P3DM, and we created like a time series of the data that we produced. Yes, it's true that it can be driven by external people, but I think we need to consider what is the point of the P3DM, because if the point is to update it, it also takes a lot of initiative that would be coming from the community. And we need to understand that, they have livelihoods to do, and it's not an easy thing to be out of their work for 2 weeks or, a week. I think what's really important is how much of the outcome are we wanting out of it, and if it has been solved.
Thank you, Min. I wonder if there's anyone else who would like to bring some insights in the process. I know a lot of people here in the audience actually have done some mapping as well as 3D mapping in some ways. Just let me know. Just maybe raise your hand and I can call on you.
Si
Meanwhile,
Patricia mayroong question.
Yeah. I'll just ask the question as they come in. There's one question here from TJ Cipriano. It says, how do we ensure the sustainability of P3DM initiatives in the long run and make sure that the community, that they update the map, since the landscapes and the demographic profile in the community also changes. So landscapes meant physical and human landscapes.
Yeah, that's true. Good thing merong GIS and we can actually capture that information. So the P3DM is actually just a representation. Both is a representation of the environment, isn't it? And we're taking a snapshot of that P3DM with the GIS. And I think we can be creative in how we're actually using it and how we're actually integrating it with other data sets. You can combine it with remote sensing. You can combine it with other surveying technologies so that you'll be able to update that information. I just don't want to make it look like that the community has this big responsibility to update it. If they wanted to update it, it's up to them, isn't it? It's not up to us to actually tell them, actually, you need to update it. It's not. But but it's up to them if they really wanted to update that. The information has already been captured from the first one. So if they wanted, they feel the benefit of it. So that's why it's really very important to engage and to communicate and to dialogue with the people in the community. It's not just a one-off thing. If that's, if it's for the community, we really need to make sure that people understand what the purpose is.
Thank you, Mian. And that actually was a very interesting set of questions that were actually linked together. The question that was asked by TJ and the previous one that was asked by one of our colleagues, especially in terms of, how do you update the map? And then in the end, it's all about the community, really, right? Why do you have to bring your own agenda and say that they need to update when they feel like they don't have to? And that's interesting. Before I read the question of Pat Algura, let me just relate something that some of my colleagues here are also familiar, and I wanted to share this with you, Yasmin, because there's still a lot of people who are having some difficulty understanding what participatory mapping is all about, or especially the P3DM. So I remember there was one article that was submitted by a colleague to an international journal, and one on P3DM, and one of the comments that was given to him by this reviewer was that I don't quite get the whole idea of P3DM. What happens when there is a disaster? Do people have to go back to the participatory map that they did to consult? Which of course missed the whole point entirely. But at the same time, it made us realize that, maybe we need a much more efficient job of making sure that what all the endeavors that we do related to mapping are clearly understood. Maybe it's an opportunity for us to make clear our intentions when we do mapping. So I thought it was interesting, especially too. Anyway, so let me ask this question from Pat Algura. How do we weigh mapping? How do we weigh mapping the unmapped in research and studies in the academe, especially if they are sensitive issues? We find them interesting and cool, but sometimes it could bring more harm than good. Thank you, Pat, for that question.
Yeah. In the professional world, when we gather information from other sources, we have like data agreements that we have to sign that this is going to be used only for this purpose. After this has been used, this needs to be deleted in your computer. No more other copies can be found on other devices. So usually yung information is merong licensing, merong agreement between two parties, isn't it? So what's important is to understand, both parties should understand what the data is all about and what the information. And as somebody who had lived with communities and with marginalized communities, it is important that we put importance to the communities and what they wanted, not just our own, interest. It's really very important. If we think that they will benefit, if it can be shown, it's also very important that they understand the purpose of it being shown to other people or to the wider community. Yeah.
Thank you.
There's so
Thank
many
you for that
sensitive issues and information in the communities.
Yeah, I know. I wonder if one of my colleagues who has done some research among human rights defenders can speak a little bit on the question that was raised by Pat.
Hello. Hello po.
Sorry for putting you on the spot, Mads.
Ayan, good afternoon po. Ma'am, thank you. It was a very illuminating talk, and it really is important to stress these issues, no? And thank you, Pat, for this question. I would just like to share what we did when Ma'am Yani Lopez and I did a research on the geonarratives of human rights defenders in Negros. It was really one of the issues that we had to grapple with. How do we protect our participants? Because these participants, of course, are targeted, and these are vulnerable people because of their human rights advocacies and their human rights work. I think that geonarratives as a method is a beautiful complementary tool, no, to other GIS tools that are available to kind of float out these sensitive issues. And as we know, GIS can afford locational specificities, but with the research that we did with human rights defenders, we wanted to help them share their experiences without pointing out where they are. So we asked them to make their mental maps, and we were very careful about what maps to show, and we asked them to also kind of overgeneralize what they were mapping. So yung mga kung yung locations, halimbawa, nasaan yung plaza, nasaan yung office, ganyan, we had to sort of do away with the specificities na that is usually shown in GIS. And also, ang ginawa namin was we anonymized everything from the very beginning. So the safety of the human rights defenders were of the utmost importance. So the focus really was on their experiences and in their conduct of their advocacies, and not really where they are to protect their safety. So I think it generally is no is going to be based on what the research is, what's the point of the research really, and what you want to say. And these are tools na pwedeng gamitin for so many things. It can be used insidiously. It can be used for the benefit of communities, as was shown by Ma'am and other colleagues who have done GIS work. So yun po. Salamat po ulit.
Thank you, Mads. It's very interesting to see so many applications, for some of these questions that were raised, especially in relation to the use of GIS, its vast potential for participatory purposes, as well as also for, how do you call this earlier, intellectual property. Meron pa bang questions or other comments from the floor? Okay. All right. It's 6:11 here in the Philippines, and I'm sure it's past your bedtime, Jasmin. So we'll conclude this webinar at this point. Let me get okay. So thank you very much for sharing your time, Jasmin, with us. I think I wish to thank our audience for their participation in our discussion, the questions, and also the other insights that were given by other people in the Zoom chat. Now, to show our appreciation, the Philippine Geographical Society would like to present this certificate to our speaker. The certificate of appreciation is given to Jasmin Callosa-Tarr for the valuable insights and expertise shared as a virtual speaker for the talk JS to Leverage on Spatial Data as part of the Philippine Geographical Society Lecture Series held on 15 August 2022, signed by by Joseph Alice and Professor Emmanuel Garcia, the president of the Philippine Geographical Society. Once again, thank you so much, Jasmin, for being with us tonight. We hope to have you again in the future.
Oh, thank you so
And with
much.
that-
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, we are now gearing towards the end of our program. I would like to call Professor Darlene Oxenia Gutierrez, the Associate Dean for Administration of the UP College of Social Sciences and Philosophy, to give her closing remarks. But before that, may I just give a short tidbit that Ma'am Darlene is one of the earliest professors of digital map, of cartography and digital mapping. Ma'am Darlene?
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Actually, I did mine, no, mano-mano. Hindi pa usong computer noon. So you can just imagine how difficult it is to make maps without this kind of technology. But very fortunate, no, yung generation ngayon because of this technology. Okay, so to close, no, I would like to thank our dear Jasmin. It's been a long time Thank you for that great lecture. You have stirred our minds to think more spatially and appreciate spatial data and what we can do about them and how powerful spatial data could be. You have, in fact, reinforced, no, the value of P3DM, which is a powerful tool that can be used to understand, appreciate our environment, and also, no, this can be used also to manage our resources, adapt to changes, anticipate hazardous events, no, and participate in addressing problems in our environment. We should, however, keep in mind the sensitivity of the information that we collect and handle them ethically, no, as we do our research. The importance of P3DM cannot be undermined. In the case of New Zealand, based on the example that you showed us, no, after the earthquake, aside from the storylines in those maps and the way it is presented in maps, no, it helps embed into the memory of those who experienced the event and will serve as a reminder of what happened. Kasi usually, di ba, nakakalimutan natin yung mga ganitong events when in fact we should be learning from them. No? Again, thank you for opening and laying down the possible opportunities for geographers, would-be geographers, and for all those interested in GIS, particularly in P3DM. Okay, and this is just a short closing message. No, thank you everyone for joining us, and we hope to see you in our next lecture. And Jasmin, thank you so much. No, and the department is
My
very proud
pleasure.
of you. We are very proud of you. Okay, so mabuhay ka and take care.
Thank
And
you.
maybe come back again sometime to teach a class. Now that we can do remote. Anyway,
Yeah.
thank you, Mom
Oh,
Darlene,
thank
for
you for
that
having me.
close. Yeah, sure. Let me just tell you a few more things before we formally end. That there is a couple of talks that's going to happen next month in September. One of our alumni, Robert Padrina, who is now based at the Department of Science Technology in Pag-asa, is going to give a talk called Spatial Correlation in Weather Forecasting and Numerical Weather Prediction Models. And it will be focused on the Philippines. For those of you who are not familiar, like myself, about Robert Badrina, he actually has an online presence, because of his weather forecasting. And also in the same month, just 8 days later, we have Professor Peter C. from the UP Department of Philosophy, who was kind enough to give his time to talk about artificial intelligence in the ethics and governance. Peter is one of the leading scholars and advocates of ethics in the country, and also data privacy. Okay, so there is now we have an open call for membership. You can visit the website phgeographicalsociety.org, and if it doesn't lead you to that website, you can visit phgeographicalsociety.wordpress.com. Either way would work. To become members of the Philippine Geographical Society. Remember, we're the only geography department in the whole archipelago, and we would like to have more allies like yourselves to help us popularize the discipline and spread our own gospel. All right. If you want to revisit the past sessions of the Philippine Geographical Lecture Series, Society Lecture Series, or PGSLS, these can be found in the UP Department of Geography YouTube channel. May I bring your attention to them if you get a chance to watch them? They're all going to be streaming there, and you can also see or look at the questions that are being asked in the Q&A. Let me tell you about one that's coming up in November. We have the International Conference on Geographical Sciences from November 10 to 11, and pretty soon our blurb will come out, and it will be about, well, I won't tell you yet the name of the theme, but you'll find out in several days. But anyway, it will be related to more than human as well as something on affect. So be on the lookout for that. November 10 to 11, we're going to send a blurb and we're going to ask you to send us abstracts for you to participate in our conference on remote mode. Um,